Hi everyone, my name is Karen Ronning Hull, your neighborhood preparedness evangelist. Tonight we're going to be talking about getting your neighborhood organized as you prepare for disaster. Here's our agenda. Tonight we want to focus on Neighborhood Ready program and the 9 steps critical for surviving a disaster. When it comes to being fully prepared, there are 2 types of preparedness and that fit together like gloves. That's individual or family preparedness and neighborhood preparedness. And we've talked a lot about individual preparedness in our past programs. For example, making sure that you have go bags ready, storing enough water for your family, and making sure that your home is free of hazards. But neighborhood preparedness recognizes that at times, especially during disasters, your safety and security may depend on the people outside of your home, like your neighbors. If you get hurt or don't have the skills or tools to solve critical issues in a disaster, you'll want to know that your neighbors will be there to check on you and make sure you're okay and help if they can help out. Working as a team to keep everyone safe. As I said, there is strength in numbers. So, what kind of disaster would require neighborhood cooperation to survive it? Well, in the Pacific Northwest, we're overdue for a large-scale 8.7 or greater magnitude earthquake, also known as the Cascadia subduction zone quake off of the Oregon coast. A FEMA regional director, Ken Murphy, has been quoted as saying that when this earthquake happens, everything west of I-5 will be toast. Our goal is to convince you of the importance of getting organized and neighborhood ready on your street and to show you how easy and fun it is to have a neighborhood meeting. So this should be fun. I'm going to turn this over to Bill Hall, my partner.
All right. Thank you, Karen. So why are we here tonight? What's all this about working together as neighbors? Well, we've seen our disasters this past year, the pandemic, electric power outages, evacuations during ice storm and wildfires. Were you ready for the pandemic? Do you remember the great toilet paper raid when people thought it was going to disappear because of widespread viruses? Remember the panic when we didn't know what was going to happen? Well, with the COVID pandemic, we've also spent so much time inside protecting ourselves from what's out there, including some of our neighbors. So let me start with just a little bit of perspective. I want to start with a story of the past. And some of you have heard this, but this is really a good story. In 1991, a wildfire hit the Oakland Hills area of East San Francisco. And very quickly, over 3,500 homes were destroyed, as you can see from these pictures, which are from that time. 155 people were injured, and 25 people in that community were killed. Now, this is 29 years before the Paradise Fire, which destroyed an entire town and cost so many more lives, and a long time before our own Detroit was wiped off the map by a wildfire in 2020. It's notable that the Oakland Hills community affected by that disaster was about the same size as our beloved Cedar Hills community. And in the 1991 fire, a man named Peter Scott lost his mother, Frances. Peter and his mother are shown on this slide. After the fire was quenched, Mr. Scott returned to his mother's burned out house and her neighborhood to settle her affairs. Neighbors met after the fire together to clean up and to deal with common issues like insurance and property matters. Mr. Scott participated with these neighborhood meetings and learned in one of them that Frances, his mother, had perished because nobody knew her. She was a private person and lived a quiet life. Most of the neighbors weren't even aware that she was a part of their community. So nobody really checked on her. Well, obviously this is heartbreaking to Mr. Scott. And he later said, if the community had had a meeting like this to get to know one another before the fire, I think my mother would be here with us today. Well, when she heard this story, Dr. Luann Johnson, who's shown here, and she was part of the Washington State Emergency Department, she saw how this applied to other communities, including her own, and was moved to create a program to address what was missing in Frances's community. Dr. Johnson called it Map Your Neighborhood. It's a simple but powerful planning tool which has since been adopted around the country in a variety of forms, and FEMA has sponsored it as a key part of their disaster survival planning. It's been evolving, and we're now presenting it as Neighborhood Ready. It's about you. It's about your neighbors. That's what we want to talk about tonight. How to be neighborhood ready, in addition to being personally prepared. And we're sharing this program with anybody who wants it, not just Cedar Hills, but anywhere in the metro area. Now, we've talked about it before, quite a bit actually, under the Map Your Neighborhood title, and we've found that it's a challenge to get people to really internalize Peter Scott's real message. Some of the Oakland Hills residents were more prepared than others, and of course, lots of them survived, but a lot of that was just luck. Many were injured, and 25 of them didn't make it at all. Some, like Francis, unnecessarily. So what could we do to avoid the dependence on dumb luck if a really big disaster hits here? And what could we do to include everybody in the survivor group? Now, individual and family preparedness is obviously very important. Let me provide a little bit more perspective. What I'm showing here on this picture on the left is how we visualize our responsibilities and expectations in a major disaster and a recovery period. Now, normally you see this pyramid as a pyramid upside down, oriented with the feds at the top level and the levels of authority going down from state to local. But we like to show it this way to illustrate that while major support will be provided by our institutional partners, they're going to take a while to muster and organize when a major disaster strikes. And when emergency response agencies like police and fire and FEMA are initially overwhelmed, important immediate survival actions need to take place. And those depend on us and our neighbors. We are the first responders to take care of each other. Now, this is not a maybe. If the disaster is the big one, the Cascadia subduction quake, for example, well, it's going to be a very different world that we live in. And what are the implications of the FEMA director's "all will be toast" comment? Emergency responders will be overwhelmed. We're going to have to be able to shelter in place without likely power, running water, access to stores to buy things or gas stations and other basic services. How long do you think that it'll take for essential public services to be restored? Well, I'm going to show you a chart from a joint study done by FEMA and our state and local responder agencies. It was done in 2015 and it's about to be updated. But this gives us a really good picture of how long our own government agencies and utility companies believe that it will take them to recover our community infrastructure and services after a Cascadia earthquake. In the valley, that's us folks, electricity is likely to be out of service in our area for up to 3 months. Water and sewer services are likely to be unavailable in our area for months, perhaps as much as a year. Roads and streets, and especially bridges, are likely to be unusable for months, perhaps as much as a year. And most important, police and fire stations, which we usually look to for helping us, may be disabled and slow to respond for months, and healthcare facilities unavailable for over a year. So as you can see, according to our own government and utilities, you're going to be on your own for a while without the services and infrastructure that we depend on daily. Ooh, well, that's all scary. So let's take a deep breath. Even thinking about this stuff can be overwhelming. So I want to congratulate all of you here today who are choosing to get prepared so that you can stay calm in the face of a challenging situation. Planning plus preparedness plus practice will make us a resilient community in the face of these challenges. And that's what we're going to do today. So let's do some practice together and a quick exercise. In a moment, Karen's going to split us up in breakout groups of 5 or 6 people each to see what we can learn from each other. Just a 5-minute fun exercise. We'll get our creative juices going and see if we can get into the right mindset. To set the stage, Let's have everybody close your eyes and imagine that you're experiencing a 5 to 7 minute really, really hard shake of everything right now. The lights flicker and then they go out. You drop cover and hold to protect yourself. You can hear glass shattering, shells emptying onto the floor, furniture moving. You hear the screams from a family member down the hall. It's the big one. Finally, the shaking stops. You've survived. But what do you do next? Well, for this exercise, consider what vulnerabilities and challenges you may experience after a large earthquake, and what kind of skills and tools that you might need to deal with the problems that your families may be facing. What are the first things that you would do after the quake stops? Who would you need to check on? Maybe your elementary or middle school kids are home alone and you're at work. How would you make sure that they're safe? What if somebody gets injured and you smell a gas leak? What if a tree falls into your kitchen and you don't have a chainsaw to get it out? Or a tree blocks the street and there's no way out by car? What the heck do you do? Well, when you're in your breakout groups, discuss your greatest vulnerabilities and highest priorities after the large earthquake. Then share your ideas about how you could prepare with your neighbors to improve the chances of survival of everyone on the street. Karen, break us into groups for a 5-minute chat among friends.
Welcome back. Let's just talk about what we learned. Please take a moment to enter a few words about what you've learned are your greatest vulnerabilities in the chat box. Gas lines, natural gas. Shut off water to protect building water, electricity, ignition sources, check gas, water heater, line for hazards. Yep, you guys are ahead of it. Older and need others' assistance to help us in the neighborhood. Too many windows with broken glass. All 3 utilities. We need to canvass our neighbors for tools we'll need. It's good to know what those vulnerabilities are, right? Because you'll have them in top of mind. So thank you for your responses. Each of us probably has plans to take care of ourselves and our families, but that's not going to be enough in an extended community-wide disaster. So we know that people as individuals are really generous and compassionate when a disaster strikes, but working together in an organized way is so much more effective to make life tolerable and safe for all of us, our neighbors, not only the big earthquake, but for fires, storms, and other disasters. So I am going to turn this over back to Bill.
So we have a simple and fun way to work together, the Neighborhood Ready program. And what specifically does the Neighborhood Ready program do for you and for me and for my neighbors? Well, you remember the story about Peter Scott and his mother. This is a simple, straightforward way to get to know our neighbors in a context of recovery planning so that we aren't alone and wondering what to do and invisible when a sudden unpredicted need is thrust upon us. And with a minimum amount of time and energy, you and your neighbors can learn this tried and true 9-step survival strategy and craft a plan to follow when a catastrophe hits. But we need to get neighbors together to start the discussion. So that's our main goal tonight. We want to prime the pump. We want to get initial meetings off the ground in each of your neighborhoods. You decide who to invite, and we will be there to help facilitate the discussion, provide information and material, and give you a format for a plan for neighborhood action. Now, some reassurance. This is an easy 9-step protocol, and it's not a huge time commitment for you or your neighbors. And the steps follow 3 simple priorities. First, take care of yourself and your family. And then make your living environment safe for you and your family. And then you have a way to get neighbors together with a specific plan of action if it's needed. Remember that when a disaster like an earthquake hits, it triggers adrenaline and panic and fear and confusion. And having this step-by-step protocol will help you to know what to do first, what to do second, what are the priorities, so you don't have to stop and sort out everything reactively or be a deer in the headlights, wasting precious time that could be used to help you and your family and your friends. So I'm going to quickly go over the basic elements of the steps so everybody's reassured that it's not overwhelming, doesn't usurp but rather supports each family's priority and needs. It really is worth a little time in order to make sure that we are ready for big disasters. So I'm going to use an earthquake as our example disaster. If the big one hits, and I guess I should say when the big one hits, remember that the first thing you want to do when an earthquake hits is drop cover and hold on. Don't get thrown around by the shaking. Protect yourself from flying objects until the shaking stops. And when it stops, then it's time for action. And here is a simple, focused, intentional protocol that you can follow to begin the recovery process. Here are the 9 steps. Step number 1, check your own condition. Make sure that you yourself are safe and that you can help others. Your priority, if you are functional, is protecting your head, hands, and your feet from broken glass as you move around the house. Imagine running to help a family member and slicing open your foot on broken glass on the way. Pain, bleeding, how much help can you be then? Now, in previous presentations, we have talked about an under-the-bed kit, which is shown here on the left, with head, hand, and foot protective gear in it, and a help or okay sign for your window to let potential responders know your status. This is actually a picture of my kit that I keep under my bed. And we will demonstrate a kit like this to your neighbors in your neighborhood ready meeting. Every person in the household should have a kit like this nearby, so you'll be ready for action when the big shoe falls. Now, you can also find a checklist for this kit in the Get Prepared Now booklet on our website, and we'll provide a link for that at the end of this presentation. So put on your protective gear so you can help the rest of the family. Then you take care of your loved ones. You check everybody for injuries. First aid may be necessary. Make sure the rest of the family also has protection for head, hands, and feet. Reassure everybody that there's a plan, no cause for panic. Make sure that you've prepared your own family plans ahead of time so people know that you have a plan for care, communication, and reassurance. Okay, once your family is checked for injuries and or at least stabilized, then it's time to shift your attention to making your home environment safe so that you can begin the process of recovering safely. So, step number 2 is listen for hissing, smell for a rotten egg odor, and go check if your gas meter is spinning fast. If any of these symptoms are present, shut off the gas immediately. The same if you're using propane. In your neighborhood ready meeting, we'll show you and your neighbors how to do this. I have a question for everybody tonight. How many of you know where your gas meter is located and how to get to it easily or how to turn it off? We know that 67% of earthquake damage is not caused by shaking, but is caused by fire. And the overwhelming majority of these fires are caused by gas leaks. And fire spreads from your neighbor's house to yours. All right, step number 3. Shut off your water at the house main shutoff. Another question that I have for everybody is, how many of you know where your water main shutoff is in your house? Not the one at the street. We'll show you how to identify and understand how to shut this off and label it clearly in your neighborhood ready meeting. So why do you do that? Why do you shut off the water? Well, you're going to need a supply of water during the recovery period before services are restored. And there is drinkable, potable water in your pipes and in your hot water heater. But much of our area was constructed with water and sewer lines buried in the same underground tunnels when they were built. Breaks in both of these systems are expected, and this could cause cross-contamination and make that water that's in your house undrinkable by the time it reaches it. So shut off that water as a precaution until the authorities give the go-ahead to turn it back on. Okay, step number 4, shut off the electricity if necessary. You may have sparking, for example, or fire danger. And if so, you should shut off each breaker one by one first and then shut off the power main switch last. And again, we can talk about this in detail as much as you want at that neighborhood meeting. So these are the critical steps to make your new environment safe for you and your family. Now, obviously, if you have new tripping hazards or structural damage to your house, you need to attend to these to create a safe environment, not long-term fixes quite yet, but a place that's safe to dwell in. All right, now it's time to look outside the house at the status of your immediate neighborhood to see what threats there are. Step number 5, the first thing you want to do to help yourself and your neighbors is to announce your status to potential responders by posting that OK or help sign on your front door or your window. Now, we showed a picture of that in that under the bed kit in step number 1. You put this up because it lets your neighbors know which houses and families need help first. Phones are not likely to be working. All right, step number 6. Put one of your fire extinguishers on the curb or in front of your garage or on your porch where the neighbors can see it. Now, why would you do this? Well, it might help a neighbor who can't find their fire extinguisher. You know, in my neighborhood, a fire in one house near all of the tall trees in almost every yard here is likely to spread to everybody else's house. So let's look out for each other in order to protect ourselves. Fire can be the enemy of all, and the fire department is not likely to be able to respond to a single family house fire for a long time in this kind of a disaster. They'll be recovering and focusing on high priority responses. So another question, how many of you have a fire extinguisher in your kitchen or your garage? And your garage, maybe. Do you know how long one of these lasts when you use it? Well, when you press that extinguisher spray, it only lasts about 13 seconds. So be prepared. Think about buying another one. Also, how many of you have shaken your fire extinguisher in the last 6 months? Did you know that if you haven't done that, the powder that comes out and extinguishes the fire might be caked up in the barrel and useless for suppressing a fire? But we'll go over this and demonstrate it with your neighborhoods in your neighborhood ready meeting. All right, step number 7. Once the first 6 steps are taken, then it's time to check on your neighbors and neighborhood resources for recovery. Somebody from your household can be sent over to the neighborhood gathering site, which is chosen by you and your neighbors at your neighborhood ready meeting. A place where you can all meet to share information about your situation and coordinate joint action, maybe borrow and share some skills and equipment, and take care of neighborhood needs. But because you have met to make a plan ahead of time, you'll know exactly where to go to gather. All right, step number 8. Once you and your neighbors have stabilized your home situation and assessed your own needs, you come together at a gathering site that you've decided on in your neighborhood ready meeting and form teams to do some important work. You can set up teams and make assignments. One team, for example, would listen to the emergency alert system, the AM/FM radio, or to a NOAA weather radio, or follow and inform others on walkie-talkies. That's a communication group. Another team might be formed to check on neighbors that your group has identified as those who are elderly or disabled, or homes where you know that children may be alone when a quake hits. You will have identified these at your neighborhood ready meeting. Well, a third team could check on all natural gas meters and propane tanks among your neighbors and shut off the gas as necessary. So, you remember what the test is? Listen for a hissing sound for a gas leak. Sniff to detect the smell of gas. Look at your meter to see if the gauge is spinning. Fire must be prevented at all costs. Okay, and a fourth team could check on homes that either have the help sign displayed on the front door or that don't have one showing, because that might indicate that they have a problem. In this case, some first aid may be required for vulnerable neighbors, so choosing team members with the right skills will be important. And we'd say that each team should be given a time limit for checking back in, so everybody will always go out in pairs at least with a buddy system to make sure that everybody stays safe. So this is really a reconnaissance mission. And step 9, after the teams have all done their checking and returned to the gathering site, everybody reports, sharing what they found and what they've done for neighbors in need. And then you make a plan for neighborhood action? Are there children, elderly, or disabled that need help? Do we need to designate somebody's home as a central care center? Does your family have a special need that you want to let the group know about? How do we neighbors plan to stay in touch after this? Should we report our status to the nearest CERT assembly area? Making a record of the neighborhood status is also a good idea for reporting it to CERT or to other recovery agencies. So our facilitator will talk about how to record all of this information and the status of your neighborhood with you and your neighbors at your Neighborhood Ready meeting. We have map formats and plans you can follow for keeping important information, all of this to be covered at your Neighborhood Ready meeting. Okay, that's the 9 steps. 9 but simple but important steps to stabilize your situation, take care of immediate needs, and decide what needs to be done for a prolonged recovery period. Now, there's lots of details, obviously, and our facilitators will help you with these and help you formulate your plans. Of course, plans always need adjustment as events unfold. You got to be flexible, and then it'll be time to check on what's happening in the outside world that might affect everybody. Okay, so just a quick review. Priorities when disaster hits are clear. First, focus on the condition and safety of yourself and your family. Second, then focus on steps to make sure that your home living environment is safe for the family. Take those steps next. And then you can check with your immediate neighbors in a step-by-step plan, numbers 5 through 9, to leverage your skill and resources as a group to help each other plan next steps and continue to work together. Now, when you organize your first meeting with your chosen neighbors, our facilitator will guide you and your neighbors through the development of your neighborhood plan for recovery. That's a lot of information. And I know that you probably have questions, and we can take some time in the Q&A period at the end of the presentation to answer some of the details about the 9 steps. And our facilitators, of course, have answers. The key is getting started with a Neighborhood Ready meeting. So at this point in our discussion, I would like to turn the meeting over to our Neighborhood Ready Outreach Coordinator, Melinda Beaumont. She is going to explain how we can get the program started in your neighborhood, how to set up your first meeting, and what happens next. Melinda.
Thank you, Bill. That was a great summary of the 9-step program. So how do you get this set up? What are the steps to get you to your first meeting? Well, the first step is to locate a host. Wouldn't Mr. Rogers make a great host? But he's not here. So one of us is going to have to be a host. Perhaps you will decide tonight that you want to be a host and you want to organize your neighborhood. Or perhaps you know a neighbor that might be interested in being a host. Being a host isn't a huge time commitment and really does require just a few hours of prep. So once you've identified a host, you'll want to contact us at info@cedarhillsready@gmail.com, and we will connect you with a facilitator who is going to step you through the process. We provide the printed materials, and you can use us as sounding boards. And it's worth repeating that we do all of this for free, because we're committed to our neighbors' safety. The third step is your first job as a host is to decide on who to invite. Who is going to be in your neighborhood group? This could be as few as 6 homes on your block or up to 20. It's really up to you to start with what you can realistically do. Okay, so here's the steps that you will take before the meeting. You'll want to create a map, and your facilitator will be able to help you with this. And this can be as low tech as just drawing a hand-drawn map, or you can download a map from many sources, Google Maps, the Beaverton School District, and even the Hatch neighborhood website has maps. So your facilitator will help you with this, and we're going to look at an example of a map on the next slide. You're also going to need an invitation, and we have a template for that. You're going to decide your desired location. We might talk about that a bit. The location can be in person. That's what we prefer. We think that has the best results, but some people are still not comfortable with that, so Zoom will still be an alternative. But if it's in person, it could be in a park. It doesn't have to be in your own home. It could be in a room at one of our libraries. Maybe someone's backyard or front yard would work better. Or you can take that step to have coffee and tea in your living room with your neighborhood group. But you're going to need to assess the comfort level of your neighbors to determine which will be the best for all. Okay, now the fun part starts. Your facilitator will provide you with a folder for each neighbor in your group, and this folder will have a copy of that map, the invitation, a contact and resource inventory sheet, which we'll talk about in a bit, and a booklet that's outlining those 9 steps and has the help and I'm okay sign also. And you're going to deliver these to each neighbor in your neighborhood group, and hopefully have a chance to speak with each of them to explain the program and its importance. Here's a sample neighborhood map. This is a real street, 120th, and this neighborhood group has 19 homes. That's about the max of what you want to have in your group. And you don't have to have that many. You can have, like I said, as few as 6. Maybe you live on a cul-de-sac, and that would make a natural grouping, or a dead-end street. It's up to you again as the host to decide who's going to be in that neighborhood group. Okay. So you're at your meeting now, your first meeting. What do you want to do? Well, first of all, we've been living under the cloud of COVID for the past 2 years, so we may not really know what our neighbors have been up to. So let's take a few moments to reconnect. And then learning the 9 steps will be presented by the facilitator, and that's basically the program that Bill has outlined. And then you're going to create, this is the part that's specific to your neighborhood, create your neighborhood plan. This is an engaging process, and it's going to be critical to everyone's recovery in the event of a disaster. And this is an interactive, common purpose planning process among neighbors. We're going to look at a few of the aspects of that plan in the next few slides. Okay, after that, you're really done with your meeting, but maybe you've had so much fun reconnecting and planning that now you want to do more. And your group can decide if future activities will be something they want to look into and consider. How about a neighborhood block party, an earthquake drill, a go bag planning meeting? Any future activity that you conduct with your neighborhood group will continue to build on your relationships, and you'll be stronger when a neighborhood challenge arises. But the important thing is you have started. Yay! Okay, a neighborhood resource plan. It's been alluded to, and these are the essential elements of a strong plan. Skills inventory. Who in your group has special skills? For example, in my neighborhood, one of my neighbors is a service person for Northwest Natural Gas. He's going to be invaluable in our neighborhood group. But you might have a nurse, you might have a doctor, maybe plumbers, carpenters, electricians, firefighters. Many probably have CPR or first aid certified skills. Ham radio operator. All of these are skills that you'll want to inventory. And then after that, you're going to do equipment. Who has a chainsaw? Who has a generator? Are there walkie-talkies available? Ladders, propane stoves, chains, NOAA weather radios. These are all the pieces of equipment that will be invaluable in a disaster or emergency situation. Then you're going to look at special needs households. Those households that might have homes with members with mobility or cognitive issues. and which homes have young children, and also where are our pets? We don't forget our pets. And then lastly, you're going to decide on that gathering site, where you're going to, that home that will serve, or site that will serve as your rally point after the disaster. And this home or another one could also serve as the care center for your young children and elders. Okay, and then you will take that map that you have prepared, and you're going to have each neighbor identify where their gas and their water shutoff is located. And this is important because if a home or neighbor is not available at the time of the emergency to do this themselves, the neighborhood group will want to come to their rescue and help them with that, help that home. Okay. Well, again, a lot of information, and you might be nervous, might want to perhaps hear from someone who's already done this. You might be asking, well, what's in it for me? Why should I want to do this? What benefit would I derive from being a host? So let's take a moment to hear from some of our hosts who have already done this. They can give you some highlights on how it went for them. Judy, did you have a highlight you'd like to share with us?
Sure, sure. We have about 19 homes in the group around my neighborhood, and I found it really exciting and fun because we found someone who has food for 300 people stored under her stairs. We have a nurse who is retired, but very, very helpful and for us if we need to ask questions. We learned which kids were home alone, and not only that, we got to meet them, so we didn't have stranger danger problems. We have a vice principal in our neighborhood who is very organized and would help us get organized. And then, of course, we know who the certs were, and we actually did a little exercise practicing with our walkie-talkies to see how far the range was so that we could actually reach the school or the park or whatever around us.
Great. Thanks, Judy.
Sure.
Is Barbara here to share something?
I am. I have two things, a serious and a fun one. So I was doing some Map Your Neighborhood training and in a cul-de-sac, and we had found out that only one person knew that we had a woman who was a paraplegic that lived in the cul-de-sac, and no one knew that. They saw the caregiver come and go, and that's who they thought lived in that home.
Wow.
So that was the only way that we found out that there was a paraplegic woman living there. The second thing, and the more fun thing, is we try to get together every summer, kind of do a bake out thing in our cul-de-sac, and we pick one item that we really focus on. And last year it was everybody getting fire extinguishers. We asked the question, how many have fire extinguishers? And most people raised their hand. How many were over 10 years old? Most of the fire extinguishers were over 10 years old. And so we try to pick one huge focus. This year it's going to be water. We're finding out how critical water is.
Yeah, great. Okay, those are great highlights from some meetings. And I think if we were able to have the time to interview everyone that's had a neighborhood meeting, we'd learn a whole bunch more, but onward and upward. So we're going to ask you in a moment to participate in a poll. And this is where we want you to give us feedback about setting up a neighborhood ready meeting on your block. But this is our call to action. We'd like you to consider, or our hope is that you'll commit to taking a few hours of your time to organize your neighbors. Or perhaps you could recruit a neighbor on your block to host or help you co-host a neighborhood meeting. Or could you at least share this meeting's information with one neighbor and then agree to check on each other in a disaster? These are just some action items that we'd like you to consider. So, okay, Karen, let's start the poll.
So I'm going to share the results. This is the first time we've ever done a poll. So, all right. So it looks like 94% of the people are interested in increased safety for myself and family. This is great. And we've got 6 out of the 15 have saying that they can host. This is wonderful.
I'm so anxious to hear about everyone's plans. And I'm going to turn it back to Bill now.
Oh. Bill.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you everybody for listening to our pitch. Neighborhoods are so important in our lives and will be even more important to our successful recovery after a major disaster strikes. We want to help you organize. So while looking at these wonderful Cedar Hills neighbors in this picture enjoy talking and planning together, let me briefly just summarize what we did tonight, try to convey why it's so critical to work together for our resiliency as a community and to help each other to save lives, save homes, and make connections. We summarized a simple but powerful FEMA-sponsored 9-step strategy for taking care of ourselves and planning together as neighbors when a disaster strikes, a protocol which can be presented in detail at your neighborhood gathering. And then secondly, we presented an offer to help you start you out with a first neighborhood meeting and the steps to make that happen. It's not hard. Let's get started. We want to hear from you. Even if you didn't respond in the poll, let us help you get started. Contact us at info.cedarhillsready@gmail.com or call us at 971-361-9348.
Quick reminder, you can get a free copy of our Get Prepared Now booklet on our website, and we have copies of this presentation and the video on the website at the link shown on this page. Thanks for watching. I hope you found this video useful. If you did, click on the like button, or better yet, subscribe to our channel. Check out another one of our videos and let us know in the comments and questions any tips you have. Be safe.